Dances with Robots, a conversation with Sage Ni'Ja Whitson, recorded at the Brown Arts Institute on March 13th, 2025. The photos featured in this video were taken during Sage Ni'Ja Whitson's early phase research residency for their project titled Transtraterrestrial, the Extraterrestrial. The residency was produced by Consciously Produced and hosted at the Brown Arts Institute in March 2025. Thank you to Martin Nunez Bonilla for his photography during the residency.
Hi, who are you? And can you describe maybe your person and how you're present in space today?
Thank you. I'm Sage Ni'Ja Whitson and have been in the world as Ni'Ja Whitson for maybe a year or two ago. I'm in the room as a Black person, a queer person, a trans person, a farmer, especially in my overalls today, medicine worker. What was the other part of that? There was another part of that.
I mean, you kind of killed it here. Embodiment and environment.
Ooh, the environments are that's a curious question. I tend to be a bit of a nomad, and the environments I've been moving my embodiment in these days are Southern California. I teach there and tend to land there with some trees, fruit trees. I just planted a couple of new trees that I'm really curious to see how they are going, how they're growing, and put some kale and collards and broccolini and garlic in the ground before traveling here. So thinking about that geography a bit, just how the rain is taking care of the land. I teach in Southern California, but I find myself kind of bi-coastal and beyond, just really of places rather than a place.
Sure. I always thought that broccolini was like baby carrots to carrots, like broccolini to broccoli, but broccolini is its own thing.
It is its own thing.
I'm learning things. It's really, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're
it's my first time planting it, so I'm going to learn a lot about it.
Sure. I mean, ever the educator, I suppose. So then, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about your the gamut of your research. I'm thinking in sort of dancerly and choreographic context.
Sure,
but also, of course, the dimensions of your research are quite prismatic. And so, I wonder if you can talk about, like, literally, kind of what do you do?
What do I do? In the movement world of things, I think I should first say that I'm an improviser, and that I work in Black improvisatory forms, and that has shown up with through capoeira and house, Orisha dance, and West African performance, spiritual practices, just all forms that run the spectrum of being, I would say, all being spiritual in their own ways, in really distinct ways, overlapping with queerness, with a particular kind of historical frameworks that I also am interested in finding where queerness and transness show up, even in the histories that are maybe not as obvious in those forms. I would say that I've been interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary as long as I've been a mover, which is a long time. I started writing before I really understood that I didn't have to make a choice. I didn't have to. There's some part of me at some point was invested in this singularity of expression, whatever kind of teaching that shows up in. But I ended up going to school to be a neuroscientist, wanted to be a surgeon, and I was devastated when I realized that was not my path, and was going to drop out of college. Because I was like, well, if I'm not going to be a doctor, then I don't know why I'm here. And great, kind people said, you can just change your major. So I stayed and let myself expand, and really got out of that kind of one trajectory. So in all of that kind of yearning for information and expressivity, I have worked moved in, worked in, created in lots of different things, and researching in lots of different trajectories for a long time. And maybe a part of just how I'm made, I find myself as an artist, referring to myself as an artist first, so that I can hold on to what I'm understanding now as really a practice of staying with the work to find the form that it wants, and as opposed to some otherwise what might be conditioning of form before the work actually has had a chance to become itself. So that means oftentimes that I'm locating practices within practices in order to satisfy whatever inquiry there is in that moment. So that can look like live performance art, writing, VR and XR. It can look like an interest in microgravity and experiments within gravity, and so on. So being an artist has allowed for me, or thinking of myself in that way first, creates a kind of freedom that I've sought forever.
So I'm so intrigued by your phrasing, practices within practices.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about, and you've already alluded to many of them, but some of the different kind of critical frames or lenses that you employ as you are constellating across these different media or data or story. What are some of the lenses, the frames?
I'll name again improvisation. And improvisation as it comes out of, I would say, Black musical traditions have been really important lenses for me. So the ways that jazz artists, drummers in West African traditions, or hand drumming traditions in the diaspora, the theatrical jazz aesthetic that is drawing from Yoruba spirituality, jazz music, these kinds of improvisatory lenses that are very much about simultaneity and collaboration. Those are staples for me. Science fiction and Afrofuturism. Black feminist practice, Black radical imaginary, and other things I don't know how to name. Sleeping and dreaming as a lens. Just the thinking about the ways that spirituality informs my waking self, my resting self, my sleeping self, and that having spirituality as a center, I would say is a lens for me, particularly through Yoruba and related diasporic traditions, where making space for that unknown is critical to research, to kind of living that as research.
So I guess I'm super curious. I mean, we've talked with a number of other folks we've interviewed about the relationship of, if not spirituality to the cosmos, then kind of phenomenological lenses that are informed by spiritual practices that tend to be Western hegemonic modalities. But we've not yet talked about how African and Africanist theologies contend with the heaven. But no, even just what I did, but just by referring to the heavens. Oh my God, I'm doing it! So I'm super curious then, at a kind of base biodata level, how you started getting into questions of space and the interstellar, but maybe at a kind of, within a kind of the practice within the practice. What does this have to do with the spirit?
Everything. Wow, that's a thick question. One road of that answer, I'm thinking of my child self that was grew up in a home where there were avid Stephen King fans. Every single adaptation I watched as a child, arguably too young to have been watching, given when I was born.
You really got to wait until your 30s.
Yeah. Should maybe not have watched it on loop as a little one, but certainly did. The Alien series. I knew that thing word for word before I was 6. I'm sure. It's also, interestingly enough, my first hints of queerness was through Alien.
Was it Ripley?
It was not Ripley.
Was it?
So problematic. It was the character in playing the in brown phase, cosplaying the Latina. My child self did not know.
Fair.
Very clear about the problematics now as an adult. These are documented. We know that this was a white woman playing that role. But that woman, I remember being like, I'm super interested in what she's got going on. I don't know if I'm in love with her, if I want to be her. What's up with her? Oh, she's exactly how she's dead. Darn. How many more times can she pick up that weapon? So yeah, Alien was something also on loop. So I grew up watching lots of science fiction, lots of Star Trek. I mean, all of it. Sci-fi and horror was just hugely in my film constellation as a kid. So, and that also interestingly sets up a kind of, I don't know, that good bad also dichotomy of relationship to space, right? That there is this English speaking cis male identified or kind of masculinist presence that will save the galaxies within the world of that. And then there was also the kind of experiment, the dreaming, the recognition, and what felt like for me, certainly as a kid, like the recognition that there is a beyond that we have access to. Like that didn't feel far-fetched to me growing up. So I, very young had been kind of introduced to space as something accessible to think about, dream about, move in relationship to. And as I started to, I an aunt that has now passed some years ago, just doing some kind of basic genealogical questioning. I don't remember exactly what I was working on at the time, but she had mentioned, talked about her grandmother and just kind of name dropped her and talked about her being a Black Indian. And she was a medicine worker and she would do all the, she had roots and she planted things and people would come for her medicine. And then she just went on and talked about someone else. And I was like, wait a minute, I've never heard of this person or this lineage or any of these legacies. And I'd been working in similar medicinal modalities. So that was something that I was like, okay, so I know that this is a person an ancestor that I need to be in relationship with. And as I was coming back around to that and trying to get closer, what I learned from my inability to access her as I usually do, and that spiritual work, that she was starting to gift to me invisibility. So then I just started being really interested in how else does that show up? Like how else can I find that in nature or beyond? And that really switched my thinking and what has become really my kind of artistic center for many years, moving to space. I'm like, space is where that happens, where I can understand darkness, invisibility, the criticality of those magics, I will say, in this moment, as being a center. So so yeah, both a kind of long journey into it as in kind of early in my life, and then again kind of being ancestrally led back to space, and feels like, oh, that's okay, well, that's where I'm supposed to be, I guess.
Fascinating. So many follow-up questions. I'm going to go off
Sure.
for a moment. If first off, I love the idea of like queer awakening within the Aliens universe.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen the Geiger like originals before they did the set design? Like
No.
Geiger was the guy who did like the animatronic design
Uh-huh.
of Aliens and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so like that's really gay.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, it is.
There's a lot, like it's like there's like an attention to like ionic fluidic kind of
Work.
Like it's so like there's it's the original material is like super fraught, but like the queerness pervades in it. And so I feel that. But also just thinking about like how you relate then simultaneously through a kind of science fictive frame as well as a spiritual frame, the questions of darkness and magics to this to outer space, to the interstellar. I'm mindful of how even these imaginaries are being they've always been a realm of the colonizing modalities, and so like what we're experiencing now is not necessarily, it's like singular and it's horrible, but it's not new. But I'm super curious in how you read like the Elon Musks of the world at a moment when space futures are seem to be on some level like drifting away from a kind of Afrofuturist Octavia Butler-y at her most optimistic kind of mode, and are now being defined by the kind of Elon Musky hegemonic colonial frame. Like I struggle sometimes to hold these imaginaries at the same time. So I wonder, as you're thinking about space, as you're thinking about darkness, as you're thinking about future experiments towards the outside of the terrestrial, like I'm curious, like how you hold these imaginaries.
A very pop culture reference came to mind. I know you are a fellow aficionado. So I have watched the series Succession on loop. Probably have seen the whole series at least 5 times. And I think of Elon Musk in the moment of, now of course it's gonna escape me, Roman, and whatever season where he's experimenting with rocket ships, and it also gets real world in the last season. I almost can't watch the last season because it is very much our political climate, and showing this family that is owning a media conglomerate that essentially, like a Fox News, having a hand in electing a really horrible president. So that is a part of how, spoiler alert, no one's surprised about that if you've seen any part of the series, but that, given that that's how it ends. So there's this moment where this character, in his attempt to please his kind of tyrannical father, is investing in space, and there's a scene where, while they're at some gathering, he's watching the launch on his phone, and it blows up almost immediately. Luckily, no one dies. But this moment of like him attempting to appease the tyrant and to curry favor ends tragically, I hope is what Elon Musk experiences every time one of his toys explodes. So I imagine in my delight that is on loop in his life. And I had at a moment in this work was really at actually the spiritual principle I'm still actually committed to, which is that I think it is important to the cosmos and to our quantum timelines for Black transgender people to be in space. I'm likening that to the soulmates who write about queer and transgender people as gatekeepers to spiritual portals and being integral to ritual practice, to the communications between us on this plane and the other spiritual planes. And if that is true, that being true, then our presences galactically are important. And I have no interest in being engaged in the Musks and their money, in their. I also don't, trust that we're safe. Like who knows what's happening over there? I mean, obviously there's the repeated failures is an indication of what's happening over there, but so there is something for me in trying to understand, like, much like ancestor practice that does not require a geographical location. Like, we don't, it doesn't have to be localized geographically. However, yet it is heightened, and transmutation is more possible when we are on the land, where we, are intending to do that work, or where that ancestor departed or ancestor is buried. That connection can happen without being in that place. I'm thinking about that on this other kind of cosmic level. And much like other indigenous cultures around the world, African folks diasporically have had a long-standing relationship with the cosmos. Not that has to be the evidence. I think us walking around and breathing and being folks who are made up of galactic matter is evident. And to know that there's, centuries of practice that is in relationship to these things that we understand as real and possible, and real and possible before there were even tools to evidence, to have anything photographed or sonically captured. Like, there, folks who were working with other kinds of tools. It should be differently clear, but I think that maintains my faith in that relationship between the spiritual and the cosmic. If that spiral made some sense.
It was a galactic spiral, in a lovely and loving one. I'm left with so many, again, questions about, on one hand, the complexities and internal the braiding of these different strands, to kind of abuse a metaphor, but also I'm left wondering how you manage your implications in the institutional and kind of corporate or corporatizing frames that we have to engage with. And so, like, on one hand, as you're talking, like, we need to get your ass in space. Like, we need to absolutely, we need to figure it out. Also, all of the tools and infrastructures at our disposal are directly, indirectly, overtly, subtly related to the kinds of violences that we would otherwise be seeking to avoid and dismantle.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
I understand myself as a kind of ethical heat shield for a number of the artists that we work with. And that's. I say that not in an empowered way, but as a kind of that's how I understand my job on some level. But so I'm left kind of wondering then, what then do we need to do to, if getting, and this is me taking you maybe literally when I should be taking you figuratively, but if it is an ambition to go to space, how do we do that?
Yeah.
What are the kinds of coalitions or collaborations that we should be working towards imagining to do the thing.
Yeah. Firstly, I also want to thank you for naming your work in that particular way. I know you didn't say it for the gratitude, and yet it is here. Just like wanting to uplift that walk for you and that practice for you. Yeah, it has been a struggle, as much as like the deeper I get into to tech, there's tension for me of deeply loving what technology is making, how it's informing my work and what I'm bringing to it. I know that there's a relationship to that, and the tension for me lies in wanting to ensure that my embodied self doesn't become obsolete or further erased, thinking of, being in the context of being a Black person, being a trans Black person, and already experiencing levels and layers of erasures. I'm negotiating the erasures that can happen when I full on fall into technology, and wanting to appreciate that my body is tech, and the spiritual practices that my folks ancestrally and diasporically have cultivated are technologies, and certainly in the imagination of many science fiction folks will be the last technologies. So as I've been, you do the grant writing, the how gets really complicated because I have got to have boundaries around, the people, I don't know, with whom I want to fund my work, or that, will be the ones that maybe want to prop me up as like, look at this pretty thing that we have given money to. There are some hands I don't want to shake, and I also recognize, I don't know every board member of every grant I've ever received. There's so much entanglement, knowingly and unknowingly, that we have in these spaces. And when you are working in science and technology, it is expensive. You go beyond the traditional, quote unquote, traditional nonprofit grant access. Like, it's just, the $2,500, the $5,000 grant of 1 year becomes really a drop in the bucket once you are starting to work with science and tech. It just doesn't, it becomes not enough. And then you're looking at foundation money and like, who are the folks over there? What does that mean? So I'm giving you a long response. It is because it's a place where I'm continuing to wrestle, but I do feel that getting in space is important. I also want to be there without, and this is also where, funders love when I say, well, I want to go, but I don't want to leave anything. They're like, well, what's the experiment? Or like, what is the thing that gets left? I'm like, why are we as humans so insistent upon leaving our trash or our whatever everywhere? Like, have we not realized what that has done to the planet we are already on? So we're going to go and leave detritus in the cosmos as well. Like, what has that served? So I want to do that in a way.
What's the meaning of the mark? You're asking me to leave, right? Like,
right. And for whom?
Right.
Yeah. So, the experiment is about, leaving a thing. If I'm leaving something that is vaporous or designed to dissolve, be ephemera, I'm trying to find the the languages, the collaborators that can understand that as also important. And I don't want to, not wanting to create the material just to say, okay, here's the thing that I want you to cast out into space. The physical object. There's a real obsession I'm finding with a lot of these kinds of initiatives that are really, really set upon there being a physical object that is left. And I'm really opposed to contributing to galactic litter in the name of science or anything else.
Totally, but also as you're speaking, I'm reminded of like how apparatus heavy so much like space art or space performance is.
Yep.
And so the stuff of the thing becomes the meaningfulness of the thing.
That's right.
And so as you're talking, I'm like, you use the phrase "cast out," and that makes me think about like haunting and ghost work.
Mm-hmm.
And, like imagining tangible nothings that are nonetheless transportable or localizable.
Yes.
What it means to like take a kind of spiritual object or presence from a terrestrial frame and take it into a cosmological frame.
That's right.
That'd be a kind of practice that does not insist on apparatus or
Mm-hmm.
like a $1 million space harpsichord that we play and jam to for very expensive seconds and then stop.
That's right.
Like I love the idea of like an un-object-oriented
Mm-hmm.
space interface.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. I hope other...
Yeah, we should do that. We should just...
I mean, there's something kind of glorious in the piece I was working on years ago that I remember writing the question, what is beyond the body? And I knew it was a question that came up in the process of this work that I realized wasn't a question for that work, but it as a haunting has been with me. And in the moments of this life as an artist, thinking with weightlessness as a possibility, and given how weighted the body becomes in a trans experience, I want to experience my expansive, beautiful, queer self, trans body in a weightless environment to just experience what that kind of like, what is that levity, what is that freedom to be a weightless trans body. And like that is a lot and enough and a thing. And it also, for me, I'm just like, well, what is the practice of that, right? And because all of this is so incredibly expensive, it is likely a singular experience. And something in that is also poetic and tragic. And, I've participated in so many of the things really adjacent to microgravity of, being in sensory deprivation, the floating tanks and all of those things that also feel really deep. Or just I'm now hearing your earlier question around the Yoruba threads that are there. Like there's this metaphor, this understanding of the construction of the universe being a calabash, one side being space and the other side being the ocean floor. And so, the closer I get to that, the floating experience where I get to drift, I don't think of myself as sinking, both maybe sinking down to ocean bottom, this kind of salted something that then is maybe gas and space, so that like that the in between is really rich for me. So I think I'm the only person in my life. I've invited several people to do it with me, and none of them have really been into it. And being in these practices of also being in the dark for long periods of time, just recognizing like the practice is really a tool, right? So when I am, I should say, experiencing, when I experience microgravity by way of, I don't know, the tanks that exist on the earth or the spaceships that will take us beyond, I think there is something I do find some challenge in, like, what does it mean if it is a singular experience? How do I multiply practice in that? If it is like, you got one shot.
That'd be a great song in the musical.
Somebody should write that.
My no guy. So I'm reminded of the book Improvisation as a Practice, or what it's called. Is it called Improvisation as a Practice of Freedom? No, it's called something else, and then Improvisation as a Practice of Freedom. But I'm thinking about like weightlessness as a practice of freedom, like a kind of momentary glimmer of an otherwise or other when.
Yeah. I love that.
And so I'm to bring us kind of back to the script, as it were. Like, I'm super curious to like what you are working on right now. What kinds of collabos or resources are welcome, interest, understanding that, like you said, like all of these exist within varying degrees of implication, and relaxation, and there's no such thing as a pure state, and boundary work is hard. So what are you working on right now, and like how can what does it mean to consider, or to invite others to join? To join.
Thank you for that invitation. I am working on the Unarrival Experiments, which is the constellation, I refer to it as, of several projects that have been centering dark matter and dark energy. And they run the gamut from being kind of sculpture, performance art based, building a spaceship, to writing a book, to ceremony for trans folks across the country. I am bringing that form to a close with my current research. That's called Transtraterrestrial, the Extraterrestrial Flight of 7 Planets. And yeah, my child self is very excited about this work. But I found I was participating in some science and technology, science and art presentation, and a scientist, I believe her name is Jessie Christensen at NASA, was sharing kind of like a doom, a wheel of doom, where she talked about the many ways that the Earth will be obliterated. And I don't know how it quite ended up in this particular workshop of all the ones that were available at that time. But here we are. And she had talked about Earth 2.0 and the ways that scientists had been knowing that, it is inevitable that the Earth, as we know it, will no longer exist. And there are lots of ways that can happen at different timelines. And I was like, okay, this is terrifying. So she would kind of roll the wheel or just spin the wheel and then explain to us, in this scenario, the Earth will be obliterated by X. It was a family-friendly talk. Definitely joking. But she had mentioned, so she talked about the TRAPPIST-1 system. And when I heard the name, I said, there's a planetary system called TRAPPIST? Well, that's a black planet. I don't know nothing about it, but all I know is it's black. No, that is a black planetary system. I must know more about it. So I have been looking at TRAPPIST-1 as this an example of a black beyond, drawing from Moten's no place, darkness as that has been a theme throughout the Unarrival Experiments. But for Trappist 1, 7 as a spiritual number that pervades many thoughts, many constellations of thought, and trap music as one of my, I can't even call it a guilty pleasure, just a pleasure. So I've been making a relationship between trap music as another kind of form of beyond, of a place that place and practice. There's something about the rhythms of trap music that is like, it is both Southern slow and quick. It connects to my Midwestern roots and a kind of sonic embodiment of the Great Migration. Like, there's just so much in that world of things, that this new project is looking to find, again, kind of drawing from my music interests and backgrounds. Trans-Trappist, the extraterrestrial, is the being that speaks the language of the Trappist 1 planets, and does so through sonically mostly. So the work is in a couple of parts, as per usual with a lot of the things that I develop. So will be a 7-part, one for each planet, trap opera. I sometimes refer to it as a trap opera bastard, and opera being a way to get at the kind of epic in a way. Will also be wanting, my desire is for Trappist to be developed with an understanding in research in microgravity, to one day be performed in space, certainly for the album to be heard in totality in space, and for all of the material and materiality developed in the project to be informed by weightlessness. So I, thinking about how the VR sculptures that I make, and the way that I've been working with VR thus far has been within the headsets themselves. So I'm building sculptures and environments through the tools directly, as opposed to in post on a computer, so that my body stays in relationship to the tool. So I'm wanting to expand that to be able to build these things while weightless. I don't know how that works yet. That's what I invite folks to support that kind of research. It was really incredible to be with the folks at Brandeis and to look up and see, like, there are VR light towers in this room. But yeah, so the kinds of, so that large project that will one day have a shorter elevator pitch is, I am really, really interested in working with folks who study exoplanets, folks who study gravity, the effects on the body, the potential impact on movement, ways to be in microgravity as a practice. And producers, that's a big piece of the world right now, is learning the tech around beat making. I know that there's research that has happened and is continuing to happen around sonic translations of the revolutions of the Trappist planets, but also there's some sonic capture that I'm also working with. So, musicians or sound artists that are thinking in these kind of ways, or interested in experimenting in those kind of ways.
So many follow-up questions. I love how you're talking about, like, the sonification. Reminded of the, like, black hole chirp that came out a little bit ago. Did you hear that?
Yes.
It's like, It's like you're gonna make a black hole sound like a baby robin. Like that's the sonification we're going for. That's we can do better.
We must.
Right?
Must. There's no way.
But so I mean, I'm kind of joking, but like the kind of the I'm gonna ask kind of an unfair two-part question. First, like I'm super curious, like what you might share with your younger self upon, like given the distance of space and time, like what you would share with a younger you now, or in so that they might benefit in advance from your experience. Maybe it's sort of a sidebar, and ultimately second question, which is like a citational question, which is like, you know, what are the kinds of like texts or media or relationships or like stories, narratives, spiritual practices that like you would want either your younger self to understand earlier or for a listener to pick up now, so as to understand your intentions,
Ooh, younger self. I have no, wow, what is that? I have no idea. I don't know. Well, there's the thing that's coming to me. I think I'm being tender about saying out loud, so I'll say what it is. And you are not crazy. Yeah, I think the dreamer children, not to pat myself on the back, but to pat myself on the back, smart kids, science-minded kids, the thinkers and dreamers outside of whatever boxes, can often get, especially, you know, you put the ticks of race and gender, and those things can be, there can be attempts to squelch that, condition it, make it palatable to some degree to try to protect that strangeness, or can be perceived as a strangeness. So I would say you are not crazy. Yeah, keep dreaming that big, thinking that big. And things in the universe to read, see. Oh God, there's no end of that. All the Black science fiction, speculative fiction you can get your hands on. Play. I think play is something, whatever that means for you, for a person. Listening to records. Pick up albums, put them on a record player, play music, and have a physical relationship to listening and playing music. That has been really transformative for me. I also am a product of tapes and CDs and albums.
But the gestures, you did just put like a 45 on a thing.
I totally picked up an album, lifted it, and put it on the spindle. That's right. For the listener, there was physical activity on that. Do that thing, and then get up. Like there's all of that. I grew up with my mom listened to records and had a really beautiful record player, and then I later was like very much interested in DJing. So I think that range of like funk, R&B, hip hop, has been instructive in my like cosmos of things. So yeah, I'm giving you, that's a lot. But yeah, that's in the world. Those things are in the world.
That's the constellation. Sage, truly. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sydney.
This interview was conducted for the Dances with Robots podcast, a project of the Conference for Research on Choreographic Interfaces. The project was founded by Sydney Skybetter and is supported by the Brown Arts Institute at Brown University. This video was captured on Riverside and produced by Consciously Produced. Production, Ariane Michaud, executive producer. Finn Kugel, producer/video editor. Kate Ladenheim, Circe, logo design. Kamala Sankaran, music. Dances with Robots team season 2. Ariane Michaud, host, production, and script writing. Sydney Skybetter, interview host. Finn Kugel, guest host, production, and script writing. Daniel James, sound editor and mixer, voice actor. Kate Gao, website designer, archivist. Special thanks to Sage Ni'Ja Whitson for spending time nerding out with us. Find out more about Sage at Sage Ni'Ja Whitson on Instagram. For more on Circe, visit our website at www.choreographicinterfaces.org. Want to learn more? Listen to our podcast Dances with Robots and visit www.danceswithrobots.org.